Today's guest is a legend in cybersecurity, former NSA analyst, world-class social engineer, author of You Can Stop Stupid and Spy Among Us, and now CISO at CY. He spent his career breaking into companies so they can actually learn how to defend themselves. Welcome, Ira Winkler. It's a great honor. Hey, Ira. Welcome to GoCast.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's an honor for me personally. I must admit, I think I said that more than often, but I'm a big fan of Ira. I saw you, like I said, like 10, if not more, years ago at RSA conference, which is for me like the Super Bowl of cybersecurity, right? So you expect to see super amazing people, which I did when I first met you. And if you don't mind introducing yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do.
Yeah, so my name's Ira Winkler. Currently, I'm CISO for a company called Cybersecurity. And additionally, I also run, as we were talking before, I also created the CruiseCon conference, which is a cybersecurity conference held on a cruise.
Well, that's a topic I definitely want to dig into. But before that, just like basic question, as I mentioned, I saw you at RSA conference, and you, I think you did multiple RSA conference. When did you start being a speaker? Does that passion came from?
Frankly, it's kind of on the twisted side. Back when I began my career at NSA. At one point I was like looking at there, and I worked in an R&D element of NSA, and we could attend conferences. And I got to admit, I like that. It was the only way to travel in the office I was with. And that was one issue. But then over time, what happened? I worked for companies that said if you had a paper accepted at a professional conference, they would send you. So I submitted for conferences in Sydney, Australia, and Canada, things like that. And it was fun. But then it was also a way for me, frankly, it's exciting to get out there and communicating. And I just started to submitting to conferences around the world. And one time I just submitted a paper on how I took over a bank, social engineering wise. And then it was called the seminal work in social engineering and that was 1995, one of the most prestigious conferences in the world at the time for cybersecurity, which was the Usenix Security Conference. And people were calling it the seminal work in social engineering. And then I had to look up what seminal meant and what social engineering meant, as I joke. And, I just started loving it and got invited to speak around the world and everything. And then it just, took. I don't know a better way to describe it. I think I was the first keynote speaker at the first Black Hat conference. And then
Really?
in another Black Hat, the guy from sorry, I forgot his name. Great guy. Anyway, he saw me speak at Black Hat and he gave me his card. It's like, we have to have you speak at RSA. And I've pretty much been speaking at RSA just about every year since 1999 now.
Wow.
Getting harder and harder because there's a lot more speakers, but I keep luckily submitting a presentation that, triggers the reviewers.
Wow. That's quite an accomplishment, I must admit. I've been myself trying to get submission at RSA. It's been 3 years now. And yeah, I mean, we have two people from GoSecure who were accepted like a couple of years ago, but your track record is outstanding. Congrats. And yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks. The big thing is RSA forces me to stay relevant and fresh. They will not just accept a topic I've given elsewhere many
Yeah.
times. They want new and interesting ones. So I keep coming up with new material just because of them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, like I said, what I saw from you was always super fresh and super interesting. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to hear about CruiseCon. What is it? Where is it? Why is it?
So let me give you the why first. So,
Mhm.
in my background, I guess you asked me about it, I didn't cover it. I just, frankly, I started my career at NSA and then went to government contractors, then went to one contractor asked me to do a social engineering thing because they had a contract at the time to break into the commercial world. And that's how I got started in cybersecurity. Well, I should say commercial cybersecurity. But along the way, I've been chief security strategist at HP, chief security architect at Walmart, so held some really notable positions. And in those positions, you get invited to events most people never know exist.
Mm,
And a lot of these you can see on LinkedIn, for example, Teammate, has their retreat every year, which is an awesome event, and I would attend them. And the thing though is that these events are outstanding, but they're conferences, but they're more retreats. And what happens is you get to develop these connections and friendships you never would otherwise. Like you go to a conference like RSA with 40,000 people, it's kind of like so big, you don't get to see anyone almost,
Uh-huh.
you could joke. And the reality is that these retreats are really, not necessarily small, but they put you in places where you have to interact with people almost. And I wanted to create that, but not just reserved for the Fortune 100 CISO or security executive types, but for anyone in the profession. Because I would sit around like, a campfire in the middle of a desert with these people. And I'm thinking, I'm one of the least people who need something like this. The people who need something like this are the people who don't know these things exist. And so I wanted to create an environment that recreated these, that had A-list content in an environment that encouraged professional, personal development and networking. And so I created, I love cruising. I'm not going to lie. I just actually got off a cruise today.
Really?
And what happened was I created this thing, and then the networking that came out, it was like, again, Admiral Rogers, an awesome individual. He was my first keynote speaker at the first CruiseCon, which
Oh.
gives you an idea of the other speakers there. And so people got to meet these people and interact with them, because it wasn't like the speakers would just speak and go away. Everybody was interacting, and it created the networking, it created the community that everybody loves to say that they want. And on top of that, A-list, technical content, A-list professional and personal development to just make people more well-rounded cybersecurity professionals.
So I guess while you're in a cruise, not only you see them, you interact with them, you spend a lot of time with them. I guess the outcome is way higher than it would be in a traditional conference, right?
Frankly, I'm biased, obviously, but infinitely, the outcome is infinitely better where, you randomly bump into people. Maybe you'll see a speaker at a party or something like that. But generally, you have, great people like Jarek Beeson, CISO of Waste Management. He gets in there, and then frankly, he just sits at the conference for the rest of the day. It's a single track conference. And, people are just sitting there talking, because this sounds good and bad. It sounds bad the way it's going to come out, but you're essentially trapped. For me, I'm like, that would be a dream. But even for people who don't like it, it's sort of like the cruise ships are large enough that you could go and not see someone from the event again. Or you have friends, because again, much like RSA is too big to develop quality connections, even on the cruise ship, people were getting together at bars at night. They were just, like congregating naturally, whether they were drinkers or not. Even though the ship had ice skating, had Broadway style shows and everything, people still wanted to get together and network. And that's what we achieved.
Yeah. I feel it's more like a boot camp where, you're not only getting one thing of it, but getting a full training for future challenge in the world.
Yeah, again, it was much more strategic content I wanted. It's not going to be a, technical boot camp like here's your CISSP. It's going to get content because I curate the content to get people thinking, to get them thinking about larger subjects. It's sort of like when you have an event and, like we had Tim Brown talking about his experiences. We have, at the last one, we had Andy Smeaton talking about how he went into the Ukraine to save his people. We have Bob Bigman at the car, in the, CruiseCon West in October, and he's speaking about his experience of being CISO of the CIA. And then he's also helped both commercial and governments around the world since leaving the CIA on how to protect themselves against nation state attacks and things like that. Jarek Beeson is going to be talking, on like creating a social media presence. And if you don't know Jarek, he has this incredible career that in large ways was fostered by his social media presence that he carefully curated. So we
Okay.
have talks like that among other like, technical professional development type of things as well.
Wow. And how many attendees?
This one's going to be a very limited. Well, the one in October is going to be very limited. I think we're only going to have 90 to 100 registered attendees,
Okay.
because the cruise ship is actually one of the largest, most modern ones out there. But the conference facility on the ship is limited to, it's a weird facility, but it's really great. It only supports 100 people. So,
Well, that make it even, in a way that people can interact together, I
yeah,
guess.
again, you're going to get to see people and interact with them and just have a good time.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sharing for the CruiseCon. I just want to bring us to another place just for a second. You've been presenting to RSA multiple time and other Black Hat and I guess B side probably and other in the world. What's the and I know the answer is going to be AI, but what's the actual super exciting topic in cyber? You would say, in your opinion?
I mean, let me just say, I really hate the term AI because AI is kind of like saying, I'll use my cruise example. AI is kind of like saying, I'm on a boat. And it's sort of like, okay, what type of boat? Are you on a cruise ship? Are you a cargo vessel? Are you on an aircraft carrier? AI is just this nebulous term that people use like this magical entity, like Skynet or something like that.
Mhm.
The reality is that AI is really like my RSA presentation this year. AI is just math. And at the end of the day, artificial intelligence is like, computers acting like human intelligence. It's just using different forms of mathematical algorithms that were previously unavailable to us because we didn't have access to all the required data that we needed to run these algorithms, but we also didn't have the processing capability. And now with NVIDIA chips becoming what they are, which is why NVIDIA is worth like $4 trillion, all the data architecture that's being done today, you can start to run these algorithms where you start to get data from them because we've had AI for decades. People don't realize that.
Yeah,
And
well, I was going to say, is machine learning and the other terms that were used before are not AI as per se.
well, again, the algorithms in many cases have been around for decades and they just didn't have the ability to use the data and the processing capability. Agentic AI, where the machines are going to start to make decisions on their own because, in many ways, like in many AI algorithms are just fancy statistics. So, for example, computer vision. I'll just give a basic example. It looks in theory at a number and then kind of makes a decision. What number is that? Is that a 0? Is that a 9? Is that a 8? It's just not written well. And it kind of makes a fuzzy decision based upon the overall characteristics. Sometimes it's wrong because it doesn't have things, but that's essentially what it is. Now, statistically, I could say, okay, that number is statistically going to be this one, but with an AI algorithm, I could get more exact, if you understand what I mean by that. And then I have to take that and then I have to put that into, for example, automated vehicles. And then so I need an AI. God, I hate saying that, but I need an algorithm to then put into another algorithm to determine how my car should be driving. Like what's the speed limit? I need to read the speed limit signs. I need to understand, is that a person on the side of the road? Is that a stop sign on the side of a road or whatever else? So those are machine learning algorithms that are trying to calculate what is that most likely.
Mm.
And so we've had these algorithms that we're now just beginning to apply, but now it's fancy and people call it AI. And when I keep hearing somebody say, well, AI is going to do this, AI is going to do that, AI is going to do that, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm listening to somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about
Yeah.
because I should be hearing Gen AI is going to do this. Agentic AI is going to do that. Machine learning is going to do this. But somebody who just says, well, AI is going to, create magic, of magic fingers, whatever, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, no, agreed. And there's the AI washing where it's used on everything and everywhere to just say that they're doing something better, in the
Well,
vendor
yeah, I
world.
mean, just for example, like there was an article about when CrowdStrike laid people off a few months ago, and I replied, it's like, I want to know why AI is displacing people because they just use the generic AI is, make more efficiencies. I want to know what efficiencies is AI providing? Is AI providing code generation that is better? Is AI providing, with a company like CrowdStrike, which is massive with infinite capabilities, was it the code writing? Was it marketing where they could better target
Mhm.
people using marketing algorithms? Was it
Prospection, sales, yeah, it can be a
yeah,
lot of
was it
things.
SOAR as an example? And is their SOC able to go ahead and make better decisions without people? And the reason that matters is if I'm like hearing about layoffs and stuff because of AI, I want to know why, because that way I can tell if other companies are going to lay off people for similar reasons. Is that just a grand excuse because they overhired?
Yeah. That could be. And then we saw the same thing with Microsoft. They did exactly the same thing, explaining the same reason. I think it's 3 months ago ish. But yeah, no, you're right. What's the use case? What are they using it for, and what is it replacing? Truth is, AI is just going to be at this point helping human. You still need human, right? So cannot replace 100% anyone.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've had all the trouble. What do they call it? Vibe coding or something like that? Where it's just like, I don't understand it. I'm not going to lie. But this vibe coding essentially is AI. And again, I almost throw up. It's Gen AI generated code. And I want to know, okay, well, who's going to be doing the security of that? Because right now, the vibe coding has proven itself to be grossly insecure and buggy. Who's going to be debugging that? Just as an example.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And you realize after when you're using a lot of those, even just the chatbot, I mean, these emails that you create using AI, you still have to most of the time it's not accurate. There's a lot of things to change. So anyway, I feel you. I guess it's things that we can replicate to other use cases. I see time is flying and the conversation is super, super cool. I like to dig deeper, although we have limited time here. I'd like to ask you one last question. If you could go back in time and give yourself some advice and or career wise or, specifically in cyber, just to help, the other attendees or viewers here grow their career or, move faster in cyber, what would you telling yourself?
I mean, sorry, I go back and say, what would I do? I'm kind of like in a good place theoretically. I mean, I would say probably maybe I should have been a little bit more diligent in getting a job at a big four firm early on where would have made a hell of a lot more money than I did back then. There's different. I mean, I really wish I had some great advice, but frankly, the advice I would give people right now are if you want a job in cybersecurity, you want to figure out what's there. I mean, to a large extent, it's what I did, but go back, figure out the requirements of the position you want and get those positions. And as important, because there's too much focus on just having a cybersecurity role, the thing that made me great in cybersecurity, in my opinion, was my experience in non-cybersecurity roles, whether it was just programming, whether it was just understanding the business, working with users as a systems analyst, software testing capabilities, things like that. All that leads into experience, and people need to step outside cybersecurity for a while and just get to understand the businesses that they serve and just learn the technologies and applying. Because if you just get out and say, I'm now a cybersecurity expert, let's just say magically out of high school, the way some people want you to think, if even having a high school degree, these deluded people are trying to get people to drop out and just say, cybersecurity is cool, give me a job. But if people go back and get some generic IT experience first, or project management, if you don't want to be a technical person, get this experience that you can then apply to cybersecurity will make you infinitely better at cybersecurity.
Agreed. I love what you're saying. I mean, being in a help desk or places where you have to fix things and find solution for stuff is probably a good transition for cyber. Well, Ira, thank you very much for your time. It was super fun and super appreciated. I wish you a great day, and if we can see each other, I guess in a next conference and or at CruiseCon. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thank you.